Thank you, Mark. We are reconvening the meeting, and the student discipline issue that we discussed in executive session, there will be no vote on that as of tonight, but there will be some issues that are handled internally and could come to the board at a later time. So with that, we will adjourn the regular meeting of the Fountain Lake School Board for the month of October. End of one meeting. Now we're going to convene the annual report to the public meeting for the Fountain Lake Conversion Charter High School. And I believe that will be Mr. Janaski. Now, do we have those in our email?
They're attached to the agenda.
Okay. Oh, I'm looking at the notes. All right. All right, welcome Mr. Janaski, and give us a report.
All right, so what you're gonna see up there right now are our current goals. They are the same as last year. We modified our dates to reflect 22, 23. And the reason that we're repeating these goals, obviously you can read the words, did not meet. So based on what we were doing, we did not move 10% of our students out of the in either sport or out of clubs. Matter of fact, those numbers increased, going from 8th to 9th, 9th to 10th. That's one of the reasons we have exact path, and going to see what we can't do to do that. And I'll also remind everybody, it didn't make sense to change the wheels on the bus, since this will be the last year that the Aspire will be moving forward. So after that, the assessment will change, and the baseline will also change at that point in time.
But you were doing a comparison of the same students year over year.
Yes, sir. So, good news, we did increase the number of students who met all 4 of the career readiness goals for ACT. In 2021, you can see that Fountain Lake Charter High had 8, the state was at 12. This past year, we hit 19, the state stayed at 13. We did increase our overall composite score on the ACT. In 2021, we were 18.1. Last year, 19.2. And I'm sure Kristen's 34 probably really helped that score move up. So yeah, really excited with him. So
Yes.
State average sitting at 18.3.
Yeah, because this is your seniors, last year's seniors.
This is this year's seniors,
Oh, okay.
the 22.
22.
Yes, sir. All right, so these are the comparison, what you get from the state score is in yellow, Fountain Lake Charter is in purple. I always tell people, you notice the large discrepancy between the reading score and that English score.
Yeah.
Kind of goes back into what we talked about on those DOK levels. Go ahead, Mr. Campbell. So 10th grade.
This year's 10th graders.
This is this year's 11th.
11th graders.
Because remember, you're doing, this is
Yes.
spring of last year.
Okay.
And then it'll take us into the ACT. So we've got, the blue is the state score from 2021. The next score to it is Fountain Lake Charter, 2021. And if you kind of look, each year we were underneath, that comparison puts us underneath the state. National average is the nice pretty green one, which rolls up about 19 to 20. Then the blue is our scores from last spring. And then the orange is the state score. So even though the state moved up anywhere between 0.3 and 0.5, we were able to manage to move up by a little bit more than a point. And in some of those areas, that's pretty hard to do.
Very good.
So
we have some work to do.
And that
We know
is
that.
all students
That is all students, yes, sir.
participating in the ACT.
That's the one we do in March.
Good.
There you go.
Is there, and I won't put you on the spot, but nationally, I'm trying to recall, Arkansas moved to all students taking that test being paid for one time, and we're comparing to that national assessment. Do all states require, is that trended out or not really on a national level? That's why-
ACT is not required in all states.
Right,
Arkansas requires, because that's your college requirement.
right,
Texas requires an SAT score.
okay.
Now, you do have some states do a blended score. They'll take either one.
But in some states, they don't require the assessment to be taken.
Not anymore.
Right.
Not based, not as part of maybe their school report card, correct?
What you're implying there is it could
There's some
increase
state-
our score some when
Mhm.
compared to the national, because maybe on the national level, only those students who actually
Want to take
need
it.
to take it for their college choice,
Yeah, I was just kind
where
of.
Arkansas requires everybody.
Talking with high school principals and in that conversation, I just didn't know where that was at.
If you'll remember, the Aspire was the same way. When we moved from Park to Aspire, you had X number of states who signed on, and a year later, you get a bailout, another year later, you get a bailout. And I think maybe we're one of the last two.
Well, I just know when we ask all students to take the assessment
Correct.
within that year, there's some students who may not have the same level of interest in their attempt level as others.
But I like the
But
trend.
I do like kind of the composite, I thought that was fairly
Yes.
favorable, getting back,
Mhm.
approaching 20.
Yeah. And then and the good thing is Arkansas currently is offering super scores, so
Right.
no matter how often you take the test and in whatever category, your highest score can be what is used.
So you can use, that is something the board needs to be aware of. You can take a section, not all now,
Correct.
correct?
Really?
Yes.
So if you're not happy with your,
Now
if you're not happy with your math score, you can actually go back and just take that one section of the
Wow.
test.
that, wish we could have done that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Super score and everything.
Your first time you take it.
Right. And on a list of activities, there is a list on there about when the ACT. So you already, kids have already missed the deadline for the one in October, but and once again, if they want to take the next one, there is one in December, and that deadline will be approaching in November.
Who is, who gets that information to the kids, like, besides email? Like, how do they know what all the ACT deadlines are and stuff like that?
It's been, I know it's been pushed out by Ms. Keys in the counseling office. And she does have a group, class of X 2023, class of 2024. So she is blasting that information out. We're reading those on the announcements as well. So we're trying to make sure they understand what's going on, and she's got signs up that says, registration deadline.
Good. All right. Is that the conclusion of your report?
Yes, ma'am?
We will adjourn this meeting for the high school, and we will call to order the annual report to the public for the Fountain Lake Cobra Digital Prep Academy, which is our middle school. And we will turn the mic over to Ms. Inman.
Okay. So I will say in advance that I did not work at the middle school last year, so I am reporting on the data as found in the material, but I can't speak to the specifics because I worked at the elementary school.
Yes.
So just some celebrations that we have that are going on so far this year is, like we talked earlier, the school-wide implementation of our RTI process. That serves for both academic and behavior intervention. So there's a typo too, I'll fix that. But one thing that we have, like today, we had our PBIS reward party. So those are some things that we've implemented into the middle school just to bring out some more positive culture about making good choices. Had an amazing dodgeball tournament, loved it. So we're doing a lot more of those things to focus in. Although Leader in Me has been something that the staff has been committed to for a long time, you not necessarily could see evidence of that when you observed in the classes. So everyone made a renewed commitment to that character education and have gone through training and reinvested in that. We also implemented group counseling for all students in 5th and 6th grade each week to improve their self-esteem and hopefully decrease some of those peer issues. We were recognized again as a National Beta School of Distinction, and we also re-engaged our charter for the Kiwanis Builders Club for grades 5 and 6. Service learning is a really popular class for the 7th and 8th grade, and so we wanted to offer something of that nature for 5th and 6th graders. So Miss Adams was gracious enough to take on that role and responsibility to charter a Builders Club for our
What
5th
is
and
that?
6th grade through the Kiwanis Club.
Kiwanis, working back through the Kiwanis organization.
They'll come in and work with them?
Yeah, so it's a partnership through the Kiwanis Club. So Kiwanis has programs for all grade levels. So they have the Kiwanis Club, the Key Club, but it's really built upon leadership, service learning, and giving back to your community through community partnerships. So it's a good opportunity for the kids. So those are our celebrations. Looking at the data, you're gonna see the state is in blue and the middle school is in red. And so for 5th grade, coming in pretty close to every range, there is a concern there with reading. From a data person, it's not really that big of a surprise. There's a lot of comprehension loss that has happened over the past couple years. So this data does trend nationally with some of the things that we've seen. So that is one of our areas of intensive focus this year. And you'll see the same thing trend all the way through our data. So we're doing really well in English, but then we take that big dip in reading. And so our 7th graders they have the most consistent data straight across the board. And then 8th actually made the most growth as you look through from one grade level to the next. 8th had the highest growth of all 4 grade levels at the middle school.
Okay, I have a really dumb question.
No, go
I
ahead.
should have asked it to Mr. Janowski. But can you give me just an idea of what is the difference between English and reading?
So the difference
I know
between,
there's a
yeah, so
difference, but-
English and reading, so when you're looking at English, it's really the rules of the English language. A lot of grammar, your punctuation, clearing up like sentence structure, all of that. So reading is gonna be based on, I've read a passage and now how I understand that, yeah.
Comprehension.
Comprehension.
So
Okay.
our kids can read, but it's going back and understanding how to answer those questions, read the context clues, really look around what's happening and make inferences into the endings of the next. So it's really complex. I mean, it takes it to the next step. They know the
English
rules.
is more, do I understand?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
So traditionally, the funny part about this is traditionally statewide on the ACT, kids do really poor on the English sections and higher on the reading section. So to see this constant data where we're flip-flopped, they should be in a really good spot for the ACT or the SAT. So I wanted to highlight our PLC regular schedule because that is, along with our RTI process, something we have spent a lot of time on since I started in July, really making sure that the grade level teams are meeting weekly with Ms. Richard, and that's intentional time that's taking place. So they're making decisions that's based on data, and it's a priority. It's really easy to get together with a group of people and talk about discipline, or to get stuck in a rut on things, but we're working on the PLC. So doing that, and once per 9 weeks, advisory plans are made. So like this Wednesday, we have subs coming in and our teachers will have time to plan next 9 weeks. So just really getting that schedule in place. And on early release Wednesdays, doing the same thing. Like leadership team, that's only 14 of us in our building, but the remainder of the teachers will all still be meeting in their grade level teams with a focused agenda and intentional time that's scheduled for them. So our 2022 building goals, we are back just the same thing that we have in our monthly report, really wanting to see that growth, a reduction in our discipline infractions, and just really kind of improving our school culture and climate. Middle school is a really weird time of people's lives, and so just making sure that we can help them transition into being responsible students as they enter into high school.
Y'all probably have like the hardest group, because I'm gonna just say sixth grade is one of the hardest years for kids.
Well,
it
one of
seems
the
like.
things that,
So, y'all have a hard job.
we've been discussing is the intentionality of helping assist, just the sheer implication of utilization of technology, specifically an unfiltered phone with a fifth grader, and the impact that has on that child over an 18-month window is much, it's a huge challenge. And so we're thinking about how can we help support parents in the context of that decision-making process, not in the 8th grade, but potentially going all the way down before they consider getting a phone, because we all know once you give them a phone, taking it away is extremely difficult.
Yeah.
And so thinking about the parameters of what that might look like to make that 5th grade experience or potentially that 6th grade experience look differently, because currently the peer pressure is everyone should have this device. And so with that device becomes an enormous amount of responsibility, and a lot of the conversations that I've had with her about what we're seeing in that building, it in many instances is starting outside of the building.
Yeah.
And it's typically starting through the phone.
Yeah, social media.
Absolutely.
So on that note, really looking at putting a focus on wellness and our social emotional learning, those are some things that we are really paying some special attention in our focus areas to, just really creating a balance in their life. So,
Good.
and just some fun picks, our welcome back meeting, some GT students that are in one of their projects with Miss White. And then on the end, we did have a back to school breakfast that welcomed all of our new students onto our campus. And so that gave our Lighthouse team an opportunity to engage.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's a good report. And we will adjourn that meeting. And we will convene the annual report to the public for the Fountain Lakes. Did I miss the elementary?
No, it's on
Oh.
the, we'll go elementary first, if that's okay with you.
Okay. Yes, so we'll convene the annual report to the public for the Fountain Lake Elementary School. And welcome Miss Curry.
Trying to take notes, don't be quiet at the same time.
Okay, I'll start with our celebrations. So we are moving to standards-based reporting through all grades K-4 to make communicating where students are on individual standards more informative for our parents rather than just a letter grade. Previously, before this year, K-2 were already doing standards-based reporting. 3rd and 4th were not, so we made the shift so that our entire building is on the same page with that. Standards-based reporting is where we look at common formative assessments to assess our students around essential standards, and then score them based on a 1, 2, 3, or 4 to see where they're at, and then provide interventions based on that data during the regular school day, during our WIN time. All staff are working diligently in their PLC teams and processes where data will drive instruction. That happens every other week on Tuesdays when they meet with us. It also happens every single Wednesday when we have our early release time. So it's just kind of a continual process that they're looking at assessments, looking at data, looking at what students need. Do they need intervention? Do they need enrichment? And then what skills do they focus on around that? That's called WIN time, which is what I need, and every grade level has WIN time built into their day, so that can range anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour per day, and that's where they are pulling students based on what they need. Our staff works really hard this year too. We committed to this summer. This was an issue for us last year. We came together and kind of asked what was the #1 issue, and it's centered around behavior and social and emotional, so that's a focus for us this year. They're diving into social emotional lessons for all students. We're doing that weekly. Every morning they have a little 15-minute time in the morning where they kind of come together and visit with their kids. We are partnering with Dawson for a pilot social emotional program, and so Bethany Smith comes into our campus twice a month actually 4 days a month to provide support for our teachers. She did some training for us this summer, and we're really trying to stay on top of our social emotional issues for our kiddos that start very early. Self-management, social awareness, building relationships, responsible decision-making, just all of those things that little kids, we have to acknowledge and then teach them how to appropriately act based on that. These are our, we have a mission, vision, and core beliefs at the elementary. I won't read all of them, but we are here for supporting every student every single day. Not only does that center around academics, but it's the whole child. So we want to focus on what they need socially, emotionally, and academically, and that starts with the staff culture. So we're committed to thinking about all of those beliefs every time we come together. We have celebrations at every meeting we start. Every team meeting starts with that. All of our 5 core beliefs center around working positively together with their peers and students. Every child deserves a champion. All students, regardless of service or culture, should feel a sense of belonging, so it's developing that healthy relationship with them, because that starts so early on with our little kids. And that all students are capable of growth. So I'm going to talk a little bit about growth when we look at our scores here in a minute, but they worked really hard on focusing on students that can grow and not what is their score. But even if we have small growth, that's a huge gain for our little people. Then we added our social emotional vision. They're kind of at the end, just that we're really weaving in those things centered around social emotional learning in our campus. These are our Aspire scores from April of 2022. So we only test Aspire in grades 3 and 4. So my data is pretty consistent with middle and high, where English is much higher. Third grade did really well in math this year and science. They were above the state average. Reading, we still see a dip there. Like Ms. Inman kind of explained the difference between English and reading. So those reading passages are pretty complex. And for an 8-year-old and 9-year-old to, read a passage, understand it, answer questions that might ask them to provide inferences or make predictions is pretty difficult. So we're still working on that. Of course, we know we're going to get a new state assessment after this next year, but of course, helping students understand those comprehension questions and how to answer those is a priority, but we also want to teach our littles they need to read pretty proficiently before we ever get to the comprehension piece. So, but overall, that's the first year that third grade does the test, so they've never seen that before. Fourth grade's data, it's pretty good. English, of course, a little bit higher, math right there along with the state, science a little bit, and then reading wasn't quite as dipped, but theirs are pretty much the same thing. They've seen the test once before, the year before, so they have a little bit more of an advantage. But once again, by the time we get to third and fourth, you're really focusing on comprehension if they can read. So we did have quite a big impact of COVID at the elementary building. I know we're all familiar last year and the year before at the elementary when we had to quarantine children. You could not just quarantine 1 or 2, but you had to quarantine an entire classroom. So 49% of elementary students were quarantined for at least one period of time, 5 to 10 days per incidence in 21 and 22. So that's almost half of our student population. So when we have a little over 500 kids, that's 250 kids. So that has a huge impact on our academics. The last 2+ years, and I say that because we had a partial COVID year, then another one, and then another one, had a really direct and devastating impact on their attendance and their scores. So we're really trying to recover that learning loss in the elementary, which is why we specifically focus our PLC and win time on what our kids need, so that they can get to middle and high and do some of those enrichment things. We do not really, or I do not believe that that's a true reflection of my staff's hard work to survive and teach during those unprecedented times, because we can't solely just look at test data. They worked really hard the last 2.5 years. It was very weird times, and really honestly, just to survive, they did a phenomenal job. So, and we did have kids that grew. We had a lot of growth from our lower achieving children up to the middle ones. So we have a lot to celebrate, but that's not a real reflection of their hard work each day. So this is our iStation data for K2. So iStation is the state required test We get to choose one of 3, and so K through 2 takes this test, which is different than Aspire. So I kind of have 2 different tests to have to compare data to, so sometimes that's not really the best way to compare once you leave 2nd grade going on into 4th. And so those just show the different tiers of how they scored at the end of last year. The green is tier 1, meaning on grade level. Of course, the yellow is tier 2, still struggling a little, and then the red percentage is tier 3 of students that were really working hard to catch up in what they need. That was in reading, same for math. Math is usually a little bit better and comes a little easier for our kids. These are our goals, the same goals that you see on our monthly report. So we're looking at really trying to increase those students meeting proficiency, at least 5% in each state required assessment. That's kind of our overarching goal, that we have much smaller goals in each grade level where we're looking at more smaller assessments so that they can master those essential standards in each subject area. Same, that was literacy, and then same with math. Our huge focus, like I said, this year is social emotional learning. So my assistant, Ms. Freeman, is really kind of leading the charge on that. She's done a great job providing professional development for us this summer and just helping our staff really buy in and become a team centered around not only staff awareness, but student awareness of those essential social emotional behaviors. So talked a little bit about our partnership with Dawson for the pilot program, but we're also developed a PBIS team, so that's positive behavior incentives that we're working on with each grade level and our kiddos. They're real excited about it. So we're kind of weaving all of those things into one. We also not only talk about academics during the elementary RTI, but we have added behavior into that as well, because sometimes the behavior affects how they do academically. And so we've added those conversations in this year. We had our first round of RTI last week, which went really well. We also want to increase, I think that's the same one. Oh, and then help increase student and parent awareness too of a healthy, active, and positive lifestyle, which centers not just around eating or exercise, but social and emotional for sure. Just some fun pictures. We did a really cool team building this summer, went downtown. Just a time for us to, come together and enjoy each other and kind of kick off our back to school year. So I just wanted to share those. And then I think the next slide is our little kiddos. So Cobra Pride starts early. And we have a commitment to learning. So that's just an example of one of our teacher meetings at the coalition team there. Bottom right-hand corner is 4th grade classroom where they're working in during that wind time, full in small groups, and then just some kiddos doing some measurement and math.
Very good. Thank you for that. All right, that concludes.
No, we don't have to adjourn.
We don't have to?
On this
Okay.
one, no.
We're not gonna adjourn.
You get 2
I take that
presentations
back.
on this one.
Okay, we're gonna have the annual report to the public for the district.
District, yes, ma'am.
Okay,
All right, so these are the required elements for the public report. So there are things in here that are required to be out there. So
okay,
we have to share some of these, and then we look forward toward some of the data as far as what's going on with our students. So you have your district goals that you all established, and as you read through those, you can see that the building goals are aligned with the district goals, and you paid particular attention to goal number 2, with the learning environment that is safe and secure, and looking at providing future growth and expansion. In the earlier meeting this evening, we focused pretty clearly on that. And then, I'm sorry, one thing real quick. The communication method, there's been substantial work on that at the district level and the building levels. That's been a goal that you all have had for probably since Dr. Murphy came. You've had something along the way of a communication
we've
goal.
had it for several years, yeah.
And so that's a place where we continue to work and focus, but the district newsletter, the amount of volume of coverage that we get from our website and Facebook methods that we use to communicate at the district level and the building level. And then you have the goal of providing fiscal and physical and human resources essential to an exemplary learning environment. So those are your goals as a district. The board put these goals in place, and so we built our other goals and all of our action plans around these goals. You all know that we're partnering with the National Institute of Excellence in Teaching, and this is the instructional framework that we have built to guarantee that each student, each classroom have the opportunity to experience the same sort of thing each and every day, so that our parents who span multiple buildings will begin to hear and see the same sorts of things in each of the buildings, and try to more guarantee that we are providing a rigorous instructional experience for our students, that our students are engaged in that, and that we are growing, developing academically, professionally. As educators, we're reflecting on what we're doing and then refining it and starting that circle all over again. So that is our instructional framework, and you see that in lots of places. We are required to publish the number of board education hours, and fortunately, this year there are no zeros on the screen, so very proud of all of you for your distinguished effort at getting your hours. I know you'll pick up a couple of more hours tomorrow night, so good job. This is state information that we have to include in our report to the public. Our discipline policies have been distributed to the parents. Discipline training has been provided to the staff. Parental involvement plan has been adopted, and the middle, elementary, and high school are all accredited schools. Graduation rate for 2021, the last available data we have is 88%. You see that's down from 94. That was not this past graduating class. That would have been the class that went home as juniors and then didn't come back as seniors. And there is additional information there at My School Info. So that link is live for you. Our enrollment for this year to the elementary is 458, down 4 from last year. The middle school 428, up 4 from last year. And the high school is at 406, and that's down 6 from last year. You'll note that there are 3 year 13 seniors. That's listed separately this year in the school data information that we have to put into eSchool. So those are students who are special needs students spending a third year or a 13th year with us. And then the last 2 years, we've also included the pre-K number, and so you see there are 59 pre-K students this year, up 4 from last year, bringing us to 1351 in the district. And you see over that 8-year span that we've been up as high as 1424 and now stand at 1351. You can go from the 15 and you can follow longitudinally a class and see where we have gone up or down, and in most instances we've gone down over the years or stayed pretty constant from year to year with a cohort group. Our Gifted and Talented program is serving 69 students. That's in grades 4 through 12. All K-4 students receive whole group enrichment, and the K-3 teachers provide the talents program or the K-3 enrichment curriculum. identified fourth graders being served in GT. You see there 10 fifth graders, 8 sixth graders, 5 seventh graders, and 7 eighth graders. And that's incorporated into their enrichment time. So if they're GT identified, then they have the opportunity to attend GT during enrichment. I guess that's over hour
Yeah.
for those students. High school gifted and talented, these students are primarily served through either honors, AP, or pre-AP or the concurrent courses. And you see there, 9th grade 6, 10th grade 9, 11th grade 10, and 12th grade 10 on the gifted and talented students. Special education, these are the numbers that we report to you each year, and it stretches back to the December 1 count for the year before. And we are currently at 210 students at that point in time, and you can see that that's up 4 from the year before. And then added in this slide for you for our mental health services, you see there, if you move over to the second column, and actually even just to the last square, you see that 9.48% of our elementary students are receiving mental health services, 17.9% for middle school, 15.29% of the high school receiving mental health services. And it's particularly concerning in that the Point has discontinued its
Yes.
outpatient services. And right now we're at 0, but they were serving some of our students. And Life Strategies doesn't have the capacity to see our students unless we pull them from a core class. So they're seeing all they can see without pulling from a core class. And so our internal folks are pretty heavily loaded at this point in time. So it's going to be concerning for getting services provided going forward. That's something that we're going to have to continually be concerned with, because quite frankly, you look over there and you see as high as 20% of a single class is receiving mental health services of some sort. And I can only thank you for committing to seeing to our students' mental health through the 2 mental health counselors and the social worker that you all agreed to bring on. That is invaluable to our students and families, and we're paying for one of those through 2 of those positions through ESSER funds right now. We will have to, we'll find a way to fund that. We're hoping that we can begin to generate some internal revenue, because many of them are on our kids, and so that's going to be billable through Medicaid. So we're hopeful that we can recoup some of that expense that way.
And just to interject,
Yeah.
Kim Harrell will be assisting us as a second person who will be trained and is going through the process to be able to bill for mental health separate from what Sarah currently bills for. I think, I got an email or 2 from board members regarding what that looks like, if we've ever received any revenue. And this year, we should anticipate prior to, I would say, January, possibility of beginning to seek revenue in this current year, based on the caseload.
And I believe that is the final slide. No, it's not. That's right.
Can I ask a question, Ms. Messer, while this last part talks about special education? Does Fountain Lake have a higher percentage of students in the special education program than some of our other sister districts here, or is that pretty typical?
Yeah, we're pretty close to everybody else.
Okay. It seems like a lot, but I also noticed on the breakdown that, some of them, you have a large population of specific learning disability. What is one example of that? Like, what would fall into the category of special or specific learning disability?
So a specific learning disability is when you have an average IQ, so that's the majority of our students. They have an average IQ and they're functioning below, well below where they should be expected for that, for their average
Okay.
IQ. And that's the same thing with other health impairment. Those are typically our kids with the average IQ.
Okay. Yeah, because I noticed those were our two, specific learning disability and other health impairment were the two biggest categories. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Okay, so if that concludes the district report, we will adjourn that meeting. And we will, let's see what's next.
Federal.
Yes, we will call to order the annual report to the public for the Fountain Lake School District federal programs. And that would be Mr. Campbell.
Yes. Sorry. Ms. Robin will get the notes right.
Time,
Yeah.
the adjournment.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
You can go back and watch the video.
All right, tonight we're gonna talk about federal funding, Title I-A, parental involvement, Title II-A, improving teacher quality, Title V, rural low income, it's actually, should be Title IV, yeah, it is Title IV-A, it's just out of order, I'm sorry, academic enrichment. 21st Century Community Learning Center grant, and state categorical funding. So, as far as Title I, you see there we have an allotment, 385,626. And that is less than it was last year. When you look at our census data, you see that we're up a little bit as far as the students who live below the poverty line, and that's what our allotment was based on. But that didn't mean that our allotment was higher. It just meant that's what the allotment was based on. So when they divide out the pot of money among the state, when the state divided out the pot of money, we get what we get.
Evidently, more students living in poverty across the state.
Across the state. So, Title I isn't used to improve in academic achievement. We have, we use Title I in the K-4 and the 5A because our free and reduced lunch percentage at the high school is not high enough to qualify.
Okay.
So that's where folks don't fill out the applications and send those in. That's one of those places where when we talk about filling out the application, it helps us, and it would help us if we could serve the high school, but the percentage isn't high enough. And that's not, we know that's not right because we know that everybody lives in the same, they're in the same
Community, yeah.
families and
Yeah.
so. We do fully fund 4 Title I teachers, 2 in the elementary. Those are the interventionists that you saw working in the hallway this afternoon. And then 2 in the middle school, and that's Ms. Roundtree, Ms. Lampo, who do the push-in and the pull-out service that Ms. Inman spoke about earlier. We do spend money from Title I on parental involvement. We set aside a little bit for the homeless. We've never had to use any Title I money for homeless because we have so many other revenue sources, but we are required to set some aside. Then we provide supplemental materials and supplies, and we do have 3 students who are our students who live in our district, but they attend private school at St. John's, and St. John's chooses to participate in our Title I program, so we do fund the same amount of money that we spend on students in our buildings on those 3 students at St. John's. And then again, that's supplemental materials and supplies is what we purchase for St. John's each year. Title II-A, improving teacher quality. We use this for supplemental professional development, and then we are looking at pathways to licensure, trying to see if we can develop some programs. The state's got some things they're putting in place to improve and increase the candidate pool folks who are entering the teaching field. So we're hopeful that we can invest some of these funds in some of those alternative pathways to life. Title IV is the Student Support and Academic Enrichment Grant. We use this money, we're using it for supplemental social and emotional learning, training, and materials. So we're not doing it to meet state requirements, we're doing it to exceed state requirements. And that was, I should have said this at the beginning, because this is probably the best explanation I can give you for our federal funds. So if you have a cupcake, I know, you're getting hungry.
Somebody say cupcake.
You have a cupcake, all right? So federal funds are kind of like the sprinkles, okay? They're extra, they're supplemental, they're nice to have, it's good that you can have it. It's not like stuff you
Need to make.
need, yeah, because you gotta have icing to have a cupcake, otherwise you got a muffin. So the sprinkles are what federal funds can add in. So we have to be very careful when we're spending local money or state money. Because if we spend local money or state money on something, then federal dollars are no longer supplemental. You're supplanting, because you're taking the place of those federal dollars, of those local dollars, or taking of your federal dollars. So that's kind of a way to remember. And all the folks, the building principals, the counselors, all of our folks know to check to see if it falls into a supplemental category, so that we can fund it out of federal funds. rather
Especially if
than-
it's a new implementation.
If it's something new, then we can do it with federal. If, you know, and it gets kind of gray because all of the ESSER money was federal,
Federal.
but it was not totally supplemental. It was supplemental in that it was a response to the pandemic. And you wouldn't have done that without the dollars. So that's kind of the difference, but it got kind of gray there with that. So I wanted to share that with
That's good.
Cupcake.
Cupcake.
It would have made more sense if you had brought an actual cupcake.
Well,
That was partaking in one.
so over the last 20 years or so, there have been times when we've gotten nothing in rural and low-income schools money, and there are times when we got an allotment of some sort. And this is a year where we didn't get it. We got $797.
So the programs that we funded with rural and low-income money last year, we had $30,000. Had those programs gone away?
We used it on supplemental materials and supplies, so
Okay,
extras, we don't.
So we're not buying the supplemental material, so we're not
We'll-
gonna have a supplement issue because.
No,
Okay.
no.
It didn't pay for a person.
No, we would, I would never recommend dedicating those dollars to a person, because there have been times when they've been.
Right, and then if you keep the person, then you've got a
Then you-
supplement issue.
And then you can't put them back on
Use
I
rural and
understand,
low
I
income
understand, I just want to make
when the dollars come back. So,
sure. So no sprinkles on that cupcake.
no sprinkles on that, okay. Parental involvement is an essential part of federal programs, and we have parent advisory committee, the parental facilitators in each building. I put the link in there to the district and building parental involvement plans and policy, and a link to a website called Engagement Matters Arkansas, which has a parent toolkit, which Dr. Murphy mentioned earlier, a lot of the effort that we're putting into trying to engage parents and work toward getting them involved to help us have safe and secure and comfortable places for their students to be. And quite frankly, you know, as he told you told everybody on the first day, you know, we're an institution, folks don't necessarily trust institutions as much as they once did, and so this is a place where the state is working to involve all stakeholders in improving and being engaged in the educational process. So that's a live link for you as well. And then there are listed down there some of the many involvement opportunities that we do have in the district. Mr. Freeman runs our 21st Century Learning Center grant program. That's the FACES program. We're in year 2 of the 5-year cycle. Now $666,000 over the life of this 5-year grant. He had another $6,000 added at the end of last year because they exceeded their target attendance goal. Working with Walnut Valley, academic and enrichment activities, that's K through 6, so that does get up into the middle school as well. He has worked on an assessment process this year to evaluate the program effectiveness. He's got it listed there, fall enrollment for 21, 263 students, and that was the highest enrollment he had up till that point by 50 kids more than he'd ever had before. So
I think he said today he's got more than last year.
Yeah.
he does. So, a huge program, and a very important element of what we do, and an extension of the school day. So, another point to keep in mind as you start thinking about a 4-day school week and being in school until sometime after 4 o'clock, you would be impacting FACES and how that program worked going forward. So we want to keep that in mind.
Doesn't mean that we couldn't have it, we wouldn't have the length of time.
Right, it would
just
Really
impact- make it look
What
different.
it looked like,
Yeah.
yes, sir. So, moving on to state categorical, the ESA used to be the NSL. Right now, state has us down for this exact same allotment as last year. We use this for our 3 literacy and dyslexia interventionists. We have 3 paraprofessionals that we pay for with this program. Our volunteer coordinator, we pay for the parts of NWEA that's not paid for by the state. And then supplemental professional development, Edgenuity. ELL, we won't know our allotment for this until the spring because it's based on the enrollment for our current year. Right now, that pays $359 per student. We use it for training for teachers, supplemental materials, and interpretive services for our parents and students. Professional development on the state level, state up to $37.50 per student. So you see there, we had a little increase, $48,000. We pay, almost half of this goes to Dawson Co-op for our membership with them. And then the other half is used for professional development activities, training, those sorts of things. Alternative learning, this is our ALE and Hub. Our enrollment this past year was 34.07. And that's because it's based on the number of days a student is enrolled as an ALE student. And so you get an extra $4,890 per full-time student enrolled as an ALE student, but they have to be enrolled for at least 21 days in a row to count it all. So,
I'm glad that number's lower.
yeah, well, the
I
bill
know.
didn't go down any,
Well,
so
true,
the
but-
costs remained the same, or actually went up a little bit, and so we'll have to make up the difference out of local money on that.
Pros and cons, but the
Yes,
pro
ma'am.
is that we have fewer students, have a fewer average.
Yes, ma'am. All right, and that is the final slide of the night.
I do have a question,
Go
just
ahead.
because it came up here, but not really, but kind of is. When there's, conversations, oh, sorry, Sarah, this is for you. When there's conversations going on with children that that are in receiving special services, they're interpreters for those that don't speak the language, like, and where are those coming from?
So we don't have very many, but we do, we call like a Spanish interpreter, we contact, a couple of people out in the district and.
How is that paid for?
ELL.
It is, that's all that, and I wasn't sure.
Yes, ma'am. And like parent-teacher conference nights, we have an interpreter on hand
Mhm.
in the event that.
And it
they're
comes out
needed.
of there?
And it comes out of there.
Very good.
Yes, ma'am.
Because that's legally a thing, right? Like, they don't have to bring their own interpreter. We
No,
can provide
no, we
one
can
if-
provide.
Okay. If that concludes all the questions, we will call this evening over and adjourn our meeting. Thank you all for being here and have a good night. Appreciate your patience.
Do we have any more questions for Mr. Janeski?
Yes, we do. Come see me.
I mean, it felt like you got.
Hey, we're
beat
gonna
up.
go ahead and get you off right
I'm on board for this.
All right, off the record.
Yes.
I was just kidding.
Miss Emmons like, I'm gonna stay just to hear this.
It's like fresh meat.
And
I would like to,
Wait a minute, does it say 180? What is it?